Hello everyone, welcome back to our series of lectures on database management system. In the previous lecture, we discussed the different types of data models used in database system, and we learned that the data models, they provide a way to organize, represent and manage the data. Today, we are going to study one of the most important and widely used data models, that is the entity relationship model. I will introduce you to this terminology, ER model. But before we begin, let me clarify one thing, that ER model is a very vast topic. So it includes things like entities, attributes, relationships, cardinality, then participation constraints, weak entities, ER diagrams, and many more. So covering everything in the single lecture would make it difficult to understand. So in this video, we will only focus on the foundation of the ER model. We will try to answer the simple questions that what is ER diagram? Why do we need it? What are the three basic building blocks? What are the advantages and disadvantages of the ER model? So let's begin. The entity relationship model, or simply the ER model, it is a very high level conceptual data model. So what definition you are seeing sounds very technical, but let us understand it in very simple words. So suppose we want to develop a database for a college for managing a student or teacher or course or the transportation or the department. Can the developer directly jump into starting the table or writing the SQL queries? No, not really. So before building the database, they first need a blueprint that shows what information needs to be stored or how different pieces of information they are connected, which data belongs together. So the ER model, it provides exactly the blueprint. So you can think of it just like an architect. So before constructing a building, what does an architect do? It first prepares a blueprint of the building. So similarly, before creating a database, the database designers, they prepare an ER diagram. So the ER model is basically a planning tool. So there are three major points: entity types, attributes, and relationships that basically make the ER diagram. So why is the ER model used? So let's see why it is so popular. First thing is it helps in database planning. So instead of directly creating the tables, we first identify what data needs to be stored. So this reduces the confusion later. The second point is it helps in easy visualization. So the ER model, it represents the data using multiple shapes. So even if a person who does not know SQL can understand the structure of the database. So that is why this ER diagram, they are used very widely and during the discussions between the developer and the clients. The third point is it reduces the design errors. So imagine creating a complete database and later realizing that an important relationship was missing or it was forgotten. What will happen? So complete havoc, right? So connecting it afterwards, it becomes very difficult. So therefore the ER model, it will help you identify such mistakes before implementation. Finally, it acts as a blueprint, as I have said before. Just like a building blueprint, it guides the engineers. So an ER diagram, it guides the database developers while creating the tables. Next, we will move on to the advantages and disadvantages. Let's quickly discuss the advantages. So it is easy to understand because it is graphical method. It uses the graphical symbols. Next, relationship between the different data objects, it become very clear. So it helps in identifying the relationships. Finally, it helps during the communication among the developers, the managers, and the clients. So it is very useful before creating the actual tables. So like every model, it has certain limitations. So the ER model itself, it does not store the data, as we will see in the case of a relational model, where we can see the details. But in ER model is just an overview. It only represents the design. So eventually the ER diagram must be converted into relational tables before actual implementation. And also for very large organizations such as banks or hospitals or multinational companies, so ER diagrams there becomes very large and it is very complex, very difficult to understand sometimes. Now let's understand the diagram shown on the slide. So suppose we are designing a database for a college transportation system. So here we have three important entity types. We have the bus entity type, we have the student entity type, and we have the department entity type. And you have to notice that each of these entity types, they are represented with rectangle. Each entity has its own properties. Therefore, a student has student number, name, phone number, gender. The bus has the bus number, the route in which it plies, and the department has department number, department name, and location. And you see that these properties, also called the attributes, so they are represented using ovals. Now, the next question is, how are these entity types connected? A student travels using a bus, a student belongs to a department. So these connections, these are called relationships. Relationships are represented using diamonds. And you may notice something like 1n, 1n. So these are called cardinalities, and which tells us how many entities can participate in a relationship. We will study about cardinality in detail in future videos. So for this lecture, simply remembering the three basic symbols. So we have a rectangle for entity type, we have oval for attribute, and we have diamond shape for relationship. So all these three symbols, they form the foundation of every ER diagram. So in this lecture, we understood the overall idea of the ER model and what are the symbols which are used in the ER diagram. So let us study about all these things one by one in the future lectures. Thank you.